The thwack of the cutting board echoed off the kitchen tile, a sharp, clean sound, like punctuation in an argument neither of us wanted to have. It was Sunday morning. She was slicing cucumbers with unnecessary precision while I sat at the table, hunched over my latest project. A tangle of wires, plastic casings, and micro servos spread out before me like a child's forgotten science fair experiment. Her sigh was louder than the blade. You know, she said, not looking up, most people your age spend their weekends doing something useful. The word useful landed harder than the knife. My name's Eric, 39 years old, software consultant by trade, father of two, and apparently a man with a hobby problem. I've always been a tinkerer, not the charming kind who restores vintage cars or builds furniture that smells like cedar and competence. No, I was more the kind who spent hours trying to make a plastic RC boat glide smoother by shaving zero point 0.3 ounces off its weight. The kind who ordered specialized lithium polymer batteries from websites written in broken English. The kind who watched YouTube tutorials at 2 a.m. on brushless motor torquey curves. In other words, not exactly the image of masculinity my wife, Amanda, had signed up for back in 2011. When we first got married, my hobby was cute. You're like a little kid in a grown-up's body, she used to tease, brushing her fingers through my hair while I fiddled with drone propellers in bed. But cute only lasts so long when life kicks in with mortgage payments, cracked bathroom tiles, and the creeping costs of back-to-school shopping. Somewhere between our second kid and the third leaky faucet, my drone kit stopped being adorable and started being a waste of space. It's not about the money, she'd say. It's the time. You spend more effort figuring out those circuits than you do figuring out how to fix our lawnmower. She wasn't entirely wrong. Still, I never stopped. That Sunday was the tail end of a long week. Amanda had just gotten off a 5-day stretch of double shifts at the urgent care clinic. I'd wrapped a stressful software rollout with a cranky client who thought agile meant we change our minds every 4 hours. We were both fried. I'd been working on a small prototype, a custom-designed FPV, first-person view drone, modeled after a WW2 Spitfire, but modified for indoor flight. It was a personal project, not for racing or resale, just something I was proud of. I'd 3D printed the frame myself, rewired the video transmitter 3 times, and finally got the latency down to something usable. So when Amanda dropped that line, most people your age, I didn't respond. I just exhaled through my nose and focused harder on the soldering iron. "You didn't even hear me, did you?" she said, finally turning to face me. I looked up, blinking against the bright LED lamp. "I heard you," I said, "and I disagree." "Of course you do." There was no fight in her voice, just exhaustion, and a kind of quiet disappointment that hit worse than yelling ever could. Later that night, while the kids watched a Pixar rerun in the living room, I brought the finished prototype out into the backyard. The air was crisp, early fall. Dry leaves crunched beneath my shoes. I set the drone on the patio table, slipped on the goggles, and pushed the throttle ever so slightly. It lifted smoothly, humming like a mechanical hummingbird, its rotors slicing the dark in a steady rhythm. I flew it low, just over the hedges, then up toward the second-floor bedroom window. I paused there, hovering. Amanda was inside, folding laundry. She didn't notice the drone, or me, standing like an idiot in the yard, hoping for what? Approval? Recognition? It was stupid. I turned it around and brought it back. The next morning, I got a notification from a hobbyist subreddit I'd been lurking in for years. One of the mods had posted a design challenge: build a micro FPV drone under 250 grams that could fly through a simulated escape room. It was a sponsored event. First prize, $3,000 and a feature in a tech magazine. I scrolled past it at first. Then I scrolled back up, Something clicked. Over the next few days, I didn't tell Amanda. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I didn't want to deal with the sighs or the eye rolls. I worked late at night, after the kids were asleep and the dishes were done. I reworked the drone frame to be lighter, rewired the flight controller, and even stitched together my own obstacle course in the garage using string lights, PVC pipe, and old cardboard boxes. The submission deadline was 2 weeks away. I filmed everything on a GoPro, multiple takes, multiple angles, slowly refining the path until it was smooth, tight, and kind of thrilling. I submitted the video on a Thursday. Then I deleted the email notification and told no one. A week later, Amanda brought up vacations, or rather, the lack of them. It's been 3 years, Eric. The kids barely remember the last time we flew anywhere. We just can't afford it right now, I said automatically. She didn't fight me, just nodded and returned to packing the kids' lunches. That night, I stayed up replaying our old vacation videos. Our daughter Lily, age 3 at the time, splashing in a hotel pool in Orlando. Our son Theo sitting on my shoulders, waving at costume parade characters. Amanda laughing, sunburnt, drinking something with a ridiculous paper umbrella. We were younger, tired even then, but happier. The contrast stung. 3 days later, I got the email. Congratulations, you've won first place. My heart skipped. I stared at the screen. I refreshed it. Twice. It was real. $3,000. Direct deposit pending. They wanted to do a write-up on the design, asked for photos of the build process. I leaned back, rubbing my face. Then I heard the kids upstairs, arguing over something dumb. I heard Amanda's footsteps pacing back and forth as she tried to get them to bed. I didn't tell her that night. I just watched her brush her teeth while I stood in the hallway, holding a secret that felt like a warm coal in my pocket. The next morning, over breakfast, I pulled out my phone. "Hey," I said casually, "what would you say to a vacation?" Amanda blinked. "Are you drunk?" "Not at 8 a.m. I'm serious." "So am I." She frowned. "With what money? Did you finally get that raise?" "Something like that." I showed her the email. Her eyes darted across the screen, rereading it twice. Then she looked at me. "You won a contest? For a drone?" "Yeah." Her mouth moved, but no words came out. Finally, she let out a short, stunned laugh. "You're serious?" "I am." Then she laughed again, louder this time. She looked at the kids, still chewing cereal like nothing monumental had happened, then back at me. "I can't believe, after all the crap I gave you." I shrugged. "Guess the hobby's not so silly anymore." She reached across the table and took my hand. "You know what?" she said, smiling. "I think I owe you a piña colada." The flight confirmation came in at 11:47 p.m. I stared at it longer than necessary, rereading the email like it might suddenly vanish. It was real. Booked. Paid in full. 5 nights in the Florida Keys. 1 suite, ocean-facing, with a balcony just big enough to fly a drone off the edge. If I was careful. Amanda was already asleep, her hair still damp from the shower. A paperback draped over her chest like a peace treaty. She looked peaceful. It felt unfamiliar. I slipped into bed without waking her, turned off my phone, and lay in the dark with a stupid grin on my face. 3 weeks later, we were standing in front of gate C-24, her hand looped through mine. She hadn't let go since we left the house. TSA was a mess. The kids were overhyped. But Amanda was smiling. Really smiling. The kind where her eyes squint a little and her nose wrinkles just barely. The smile I used to see when we were newlyweds, and everything felt like possibility. "Still can't believe your little robot paid for this," she said, nudging my shoulder. "Drone," I corrected gently. She rolled her eyes. "You know what I mean." Lily tugged at her pant leg. "Mom, does this hotel have a pool?" Amanda leaned down and whispered loud enough for the whole row of waiting passengers to hear, not just a pool, a lazy river. The kids exploded with squeals and chatter. I leaned back and watched her command the chaos with ease, realizing for the first time in months, maybe years, we didn't feel like roommates anymore. The resort was surreal. Towering palms, pristine sand, the scent of salt and sunscreen hanging in the air like a welcome mat. It had been 3 years since our last proper vacation, and this one hit different. It didn't feel borrowed or owed. It felt earned. Amanda turned in a slow circle as we entered the room. Eric, you actually picked this. You, the man who still wears socks with holes. I threw a pillow at her. She ducked and caught it midair, laughing. No, seriously, I'm impressed. She walked to the balcony and pushed the door open. The breeze was thick with ocean mist. I followed her out, standing side by side at the railing. Is this where you reveal you're secretly selling state secrets through those little planes? She joked. I shook my head, grinning. Nope, just a nerd with a soldering iron. The next morning, while the kids were splashing in the pool with Amanda, I unpacked the drone. Not the contest winner. That one had been carefully boxed and mailed off to the sponsor for photos and potential press features. This one was newer, smaller, more agile. I'd built it in the week leading up to the trip, carving out time between packing lists and sunscreen runs. It had a foldable frame, a miniature HD camera, and a new flight controller that I'd been dying to test out. I powered it up on the balcony, ran a systems check, and launched it into the breeze. It buzzed low, darting between palm trees and skimming the edges of the lazy river like a hummingbird on a mission. I kept the altitude low, away from guests. I wasn't trying to be a nuisance, just carving paths through air, the way others carved waves on jet skis. As I looped back toward the resort tower, I spotted Amanda. She was on a lounge chair, sunglasses on, reading. But when the drone zipped past, she looked up and smiled. Not an annoyed smile, not a sarcastic one. Proud. That was new. That night, Amanda leaned in during dinner, the kids off with a hotel activities guide, and said, I told my sister about the contest. I stiffened. Oh? She nearly choked. Said she always thought you were just hiding in the garage to avoid the family. I smirked. That was a bonus. Amanda shook her head, laughing into her wine glass. No, seriously. I think it changed something for her. For me, too. I looked at her. She went on. I think I forgot how important it is to have something of your own. You always had this little thing that made you, you. And I used to think it was silly, but maybe that's because I didn't have anything like that myself. I blinked. It wasn't often Amanda got reflective. Not in that way. She was a practical woman. To hear her admit that, especially about herself, hit harder than I expected. I reached across the table and touched her hand. You've got your own kind of magic, Amanda. Always have. She didn't say anything, just squeezed my fingers back. The next day, something weird happened. A guy at the pool bar, mid-40s, Hawaiian shirt, Apple Watch, Bluetooth headset, came up to me while I was flying the drone low over the beach, capturing sunset footage. Hey, he said, pausing next to my deck chair. That your bird? I nodded. He whistled. That thing's buttery smooth. You built it? From scratch. No kidding. You shoot video with that? Yeah, I said, showing him the live feed on my phone. He leaned over, clearly impressed. Man, that's clean. Ever think about selling footage? I shrugged. Not really. You should, he said, handing me a card. I run a real estate firm back in Sarasota. We're always looking for drone pilots with a smooth eye. Vacation rentals, coastal properties, that kind of thing. People eat that stuff up online. You ever want freelance work, call me. I looked down at the card, Chris Harding, Harding Coastal Realty. Amanda walked up behind me, catching the last bit of the conversation. When he left, she arched an eyebrow. You just got recruited? Looks like it, she smirked. From garage goblin to aerial cinematographer in one vacation. That night, we lay in bed while the kids slept across the suite in their little rollaways. Amanda turned to me in the dark. Eric? Yeah. If you ever want to quit your job and do this full time, I'd back you. I turned my head, unsure if I heard her right. You would? Yeah, she said softly. You built something out of nothing. You stuck with it even when I made you feel dumb for it. That's not just a hobby. That's grit. I didn't speak. Just let the quiet hum of the AC fill the space. The last morning of our trip, I woke up early and walked out to the beach with the drone. I flew it one last time. Slow, deliberate, capturing the soft light over the ocean, the silent palms, the stillness that only came before the world woke up. When I landed, I sat in the sand and looked out over the water. My hobby had paid for this, not just the vacation, but the change in us. We'd found something again. Not everything was perfect. The mortgage still existed, the sink still leaked, and life would return to its mess. But we'd remembered how to laugh, how to believe in each other's weird, unmarketable dreams. That had to count for something. It was back to real life. The airport security lines, the snack wrappers in the back seat, the broken mailbox Amanda had asked me to fix for the last 6 months. I knew the buzz of the vacation wouldn't last forever, but I didn't expect the crash back into routine to feel this jarring. Monday morning hit like a brick. Amanda was back at the clinic. The kids went off to school, tired and sunburnt, but already trading stories about the lazy river like it was a memory from another life. And I sat in my home office, staring at a screen full of emails I didn't want to answer. The drone sat on the corner of my desk, still packed in its case from the trip. I hadn't even unpacked it. I just kept glancing over, like maybe it would buzz open and fly off on its own. Instead, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Florida area code. I hesitated, then answered. Eric speaking. A pause. Then, hey, this is Chris Harding. From the resort bar, drone guy, remember? I straightened in my chair. Oh, yeah, of course. Hi. Listen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but that footage you showed me, the sunset stuff, I've got a client who's launching a high-end vacation listing next week, and they want aerial footage. I showed them your clips, and they loved the style. Would you be willing to take a freelance job? I blinked. Wait, you actually used my video? He chuckled. Hope you don't mind. You had that Google Drive link open. I screenshotted a frame and floated it to the client. They're asking if you're available for a shoot next weekend in Key Largo. All expenses paid, full day, $1,000, plus licensing rights to the footage. I sat back. $1,000 for flying a drone, one day. Yeah, I said, voice a little too calm for how fast my heart was racing. Yeah, I'd be interested. Amanda stared at me from across the kitchen island like I'd just announced I was joining a rock band. You're flying back to Florida? For work? Freelance gig, I see, I said. Weekend shoot. They're covering airfare and hotel. Her face twitched, somewhere between disbelief and admiration. Then quietly, Eric, that's insane. I know. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes scanning me like I was a stranger she needed to reintroduce herself to. Did you ever imagine this would actually become something? I laughed once. Honestly, no. I just liked building things that flew. Amanda shook her head slowly, then smiled. I'm proud of you, even if I still don't understand how these little flying bugs work. Key Largo felt different the second time. Not as a vacationer, not as a dad, but as a guy with a job to do. The client was a real estate group rebranding a boutique oceanfront property. They wanted slow, cinematic drone shots at dawn and dusk, weaving between palm trees and showcasing the glass infinity pool that looked like it spilled into the sea. The marketing director met me at the front desk and handed me a shot list on branded letterhead. I laughed when I saw Golden Hour written in script. "This is wild," I texted Amanda. "They treat me like I'm a film director." "Because you are," she replied. "Don't downplay it. Own it." That night, I sat on the balcony of my comped hotel room, laptop open, scrubbing through hours of drone footage. The stabilizer worked beautifully. The wind cooperated. The footage looked professional. I layered in soft instrumental tracks and some subtle color grading, things I'd learned from years of tinkering with. YouTube videos no one watched. At 2 a.m., I hit render. The video exported cleanly. A 4-minute slice of paradise. I sent the link to Chris. The response came within minutes. "This is stunning. I already know they're going to want more. Can we talk long term?" I stared at that last sentence. Long term. By the time I flew back home, Amanda had cleaned out the garage. Not tossed everything, but organized it. Labeled bins. Cleared a workbench. Made space. "I figured you could use a proper workspace," she said casually, handing me a cup of coffee. I looked around. My eyes stung a little. "Thanks, I said, voice low. She kissed my cheek and added, "Also, if you start bringing in real money, I want a new dishwasher." The next few weeks were strange. I still did my consulting work. Still sat in Zoom meetings with tech bros arguing over JavaScript libraries and release timelines. But now, I was fielding calls in between. Real estate firms, boutique wedding planners, even a small production company that wanted aerial B-roll for a documentary. All because of a side hobby I kept secret for years. But with opportunity came pressure. I wasn't just doing this for fun anymore. I was doing it for clients. And clients had opinions, deadlines, expectations. One night, after a frustrating edit session with a very particular luxury realtor who wanted less seafoam, more sparkle, I came upstairs and slumped onto the couch next to Amanda. She put down her book and looked at me. "Tough day at the office, boss?" I groaned. He made me change the opening shot 3 times. Said the water felt too emotional. What does that even mean? She laughed and handed me a beer. "Welcome to the world of creative work." I took a sip and leaned back. "I thought this was supposed to be fun." "It still can be," she said, "but now it matters. That's the trade-off, right?" I nodded. "Still worth it?" I thought about the money in the new account, the inbox full of job offers, the way Amanda looked at me differently now, with admiration instead of quiet dismissal. "Yeah," I said, "still worth it." But the biggest surprise came 2 weeks later. Amanda was flipping through a parenting magazine on the porch when she looked up and said, "You should teach a class." I frowned. "A class?" "Yeah, like a local workshop. Teens, adults, whoever. I bet a lot of people would love to learn how to build drones. You've got the skills, and now the credibility." I blinked. That idea had never occurred to me. "But I'm not a teacher." "You weren't a filmmaker either," she said, sipping her iced tea. That night, I drafted a flyer. DIY drones, build, fly, create, with Eric. Just to see what it looked like. I printed 1 copy and pinned it on the corkboard at the library the next morning. Then I walked away, half laughing at myself. The library called me back the following Thursday. "Mr. Daniels," the voice said, "this is Margot from the adult programs desk. We saw your flyer about the DIY drone class. Just wondering, how many people can you accommodate?" I nearly dropped my phone. "How many are interested?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She chuckled. "We've got 16 people on a wait list already, and that's just from walk-ins. Teens, parents, a couple of hobbyists, even 1 science teacher. You struck a nerve." My heart raced. I hadn't even created the course yet. "I can take 10, I said, before I could second-guess myself. Perfect. Let's get you booked for Tuesdays, 6 to 8. 3 weeks to prep, okay? I hung up and just sat there for a minute, staring at the drone parts scattered on my workbench. Amanda poked her head in. Everything okay? I looked up. I think I'm teaching a class. She grinned. You finally giving back to the nerd community? Looks like it. The next 3 weeks were chaos. Not bad chaos, just the kind that swallows time whole. I built a beginner's drone kit from scratch, sourced affordable parts in bulk, tested flight simulators on old Chromebooks, and wrote a syllabus. Me, a syllabus. I even printed out a list of safety guidelines in Arial font like a real instructor. Every night, Amanda would peek into the garage and shake her head. You're a different man when you're building, she said one evening, sliding a mug of tea across the bench. I didn't look up. Different how? Focused, calm, like you know exactly who you are. I paused. That's how I feel, like I'm not guessing anymore. She kissed the top of my head. Then keep building. First class night, I arrived 20 minutes early and nearly panicked when I saw the sign outside the meeting room. DIY drones with Mr. Daniels. Mr. Daniels. I had to smile. Inside, the room was a mix of awkward silences and nervous energy. Folding chairs, plastic tables, and a dry erase board that looked older than me. A teenage boy in a NASA hoodie sat next to a retired man with a camera tripod. Two moms whispered in the back row. A high school science teacher sat up front with a clipboard. I introduced myself, voice cracking once, and passed out the component kits. By the time we started soldering, people were laughing, asking questions, helping each other. When one woman powered up her drone and got it to hover 4 inches off the ground, she cheered like she'd won the lottery. By the end of the class, half the room stayed after to ask when the next session would be. I drove home stunned. Amanda was already in pajamas when I walked in. So, I set my bag down and exhaled. I think I'm officially a teacher. The library asked me to extend the course after the 3rd week. I agreed, on one condition. I wanted to start a Garage Flyers Club. Open workshop. Hours once a week where people could bring their own builds, test flights in the park, troubleshoot together. They loved the idea. Before long, we had laminated name badges. We had volunteers. We had a Slack channel. Somehow, I'd gone from hiding my hobby to leading a movement. Amanda came with me to one of the club meets in early May. She brought lemonade and lawn chairs for the parents. She wore sunglasses and one of my old drone club t-shirts. The logo was awful, hand-drawn, pixelated. I feel like I'm dating the president of a sci-fi club, she teased. You kind of are, I said. She looked around, at the kids flying toy drones through hula hoops, the older guys arguing over motor efficiency, the teens trying to outdo each other's designs. You built something real, Eric, she said, quietly. Then the magazine arrived. DIY Flight, Innovations in Personal Aerial Design. Inside, full-page spread, photos of my contest-winning drone, shots of me in the garage, snippets from my class, a blurb about garage flyers, a pull quote, "It was just a hobby, until it wasn't." Eric Daniels. I showed Amanda the magazine at breakfast. She stared at the photo of me holding the drone, half smiling, a soldering iron in the corner of the shot. You look proud. I am. She touched the magazine cover, then looked at me. I made fun of you for years, and you never rubbed it in, not once. I shrugged. You were busy keeping our lives running. Still, she didn't look away. I owe you more than a vacation. I owe you trust, respect. You've given me all that now. She shook her head. No, Eric, you earned it. That's not the same thing. A week later, she handed me a manila envelope. What's this, when I asked? She smiled. Open it. Inside, plane tickets,
West Coast, San Diego, all four of us. Amanda grinned. You said something once, that you always wanted to fly a drone over the cliffs at Torrey Pines. My jaw dropped. I found a park permit, and I booked the week off. I stared at her. I wanted to show you I believe in it now, not just tolerate it. I wanted to be the one who said, let's go chase your dream. We held the trip until the kids got out of school. We told them over pancakes. Lily screamed. Theo asked if he could fly a drone off a mountain. Amanda just laughed and said, only if you landed in one piece. That night, she climbed into bed, wrapped her arms around me, and whispered, you turned something invisible into something unforgettable. I held her quietly. Not every story has a dramatic twist. Sometimes the slowest stories are the ones that matter most. We landed in San Diego on a Tuesday afternoon in June. The sun was already blazing, but not the heavy kind of heat we had back home. This was lighter, easier, like it meant to greet you instead of punish you. The air smelled of salt, sunscreen, and adventure. Theo had his face pressed against the rental car window the whole drive. Lily kept kicking the back of Amanda's seat, squealing about palm trees. Amanda just grinned and adjusted her sunglasses. I drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my thigh, fingers twitching slightly like they did whenever I was about to fly. Torrey Pines was even more majestic than I'd imagined. Standing on that cliff, looking down at the endless blue, I felt something unspoken settle inside me, like my hobby, my story, had finally come full circle. Amanda stood next to me, arms crossed against the breeze. You've wanted this a long time, she said. I nodded. Yeah. She handed me the controller. Then go show me. I launched the drone with practiced ease. It lifted gracefully, cutting through the air with barely a whisper. I looped it wide, let it hover over the edge, then dipped low toward the waves crashing against the rocks below. Amanda gasped, half in fear, half in awe. You trust that thing? She asked, shielding her eyes. I built it, I said. I trust myself. She didn't respond, just watched. Watched the drone soar. Watched me work the controller with instinct and control. Watched something invisible between us finally fall into place. Theo stood by my side, asking 100 questions a minute. Lily danced behind us, pretending she was a plane herself. And Amanda stood still. But her eyes never left me. Afterward, we walked the trails. No rush, no distractions, just time. We ate fish tacos by the marina. Amanda fed seagulls and laughed when one snatched a chip straight from her hand. The kids buried each other in sand while I filmed slow-motion clips of pelicans gliding across the water. That evening, Amanda pulled me aside while the kids were building sandcastles near our hotel. She looked different, not just sun-kissed and barefoot, but at peace. Like the woman I married was finally back in her own skin. You know, she said, I didn't understand it for so long. The parts, the hours, the money, but standing there today, watching you fly, it all made sense. I stayed quiet, let her speak. You weren't just escaping, you were building something, and I almost missed it, because I was too focused on what you weren't doing. I touched her hand. You had every right to be frustrated. Life got hard. Yeah, but I stopped seeing you. I saw messes and missed chores and distraction. I didn't see your joy, your drive. That's on me. No, I said. We both got lost. She looked at me, eyes glassy. But we found each other again, because of that little flying thing. I smiled. It's more than a hobby now. She nodded. Yeah, it's part of who you are. Back home, things didn't go back to normal. They moved forward. The Garage Flyers Club doubled in size. The local college reached out and asked if I'd
Be interested in adjunct teaching? I said yes. I started a YouTube channel too, Hover Logic. Tutorials, build guides, short documentaries about the history of flight. Within 3 months, it hit 10,000 subscribers. Comments poured in from dads, kids, retired engineers, even military vets. People who had felt small and invisible and now had something they could hold in their hands and make fly. Amanda subscribed with a fake name and left a comment on my first video. Not bad for a guy who once glued a rotor to our kitchen table. Drone Wife 42. I framed it. That fall, we used the drone money to upgrade the kitchen. Amanda picked out the tile. I stayed out of the way, mostly, except for the lighting. I installed the recessed fixtures myself, and she didn't say a word about the 2 hours it took me to find the right breaker switch. Later, when the last light clicked on and lit the room perfectly, she came up behind me, kissed my neck, and whispered, "My engineer." A few months later, I was invited to speak at a small tech conference in Chicago. Nothing big, a breakout session about hobbyist entrepreneurship. But Amanda insisted on coming. We left the kids with her sister and turned it into a weekend getaway. She sat in the front row while I talked to a room full of strangers about my garage, my mistakes, my marriage, and my journey from just a hobby to something real. When it was over, she stood and clapped first. And when we walked out onto the city sidewalk, bundled against the cold, she took my hand and said, "You know what I realized?" "What?" "I laughed at your hobby because I thought it was silly, but I think I was scared." "Scared?" "Scared it would lead you somewhere I couldn't follow, that you'd grow, and I'd just stay behind." I stopped walking. "Amanda, none of this means anything without you." She looked up at me, her eyes soft. "Just promise me one thing. Anything. Next time it leads you somewhere new. Take me with you." So I did. We built the second drone together. She helped solder, cursed at a stripped screw, designed the shell colors, chose the name. We called it Second Wind. And when we flew it, not in a contest, not for a client, but just the two of us at the edge of an empty field, watching it rise into the orange dusk, it felt like more than a machine. It felt like proof that something small, something mocked, something dismissed as silly, could still carry you somewhere beautiful, if you believed in it long enough. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.